Welcome to the Connected Enterprise Podcast. This is Carl Lewis, your host from Vision33. And my guest today is Regina Ye from Topsort. Regina, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Please,
Glad to be here.
Yeah, as we're starting out, tell us about yourself and your journey and about Topsort.
Yeah, so I'm a serial entrepreneur, I guess, at this point. And I studied computer science, and then I started a small e-commerce business when I was in school. I sold this little travel case through some retail and wholesale channels, as well as Shopify and Amazon. And that's how I got into this world of e-commerce, which really planted the seed for what's now Topsort, where we're democratizing the technology behind Amazon and Facebook ads and turning it into an infrastructure API for all the other sites that could benefit from the same ad technology.
Wonderful. So tell me, lots of startup companies sort of get interested in marketplaces. And, everybody knows about Amazon. They all know about, eBay and some other places. But you've really kind of taken this to a different level because of Topsort. And, what are some of the benefits of being a part of a marketplace for someone they've got something to sell, right? It's just kind of a startup idea.
Yeah, I think marketplaces are it's fascinating. It's such a delicate ecosystem. It's especially like if it's two-sided where you have to think about the user, the seller, then yourself, and really any little tweak impacts all the parties involved. And for me, that's just always really fascinating. And obviously being a marketplace really helps with the exposure for a small brand. And it really, I think nowadays it's especially exciting when we see this big rise of a lot of different kinds of vertical marketplaces. It just gives sellers more options to sell at. And then and a lot of them now actually provide really good infrastructure, value add services beyond just giving you like a platform to list yourself. So they help with fulfillments and sort of hopefully with Topsort some growth strategies as well. And then just a lot of those things together, I think, makes starting out even easier.
So along comes a relatively new business, and all of a sudden they get this wild and crazy idea. They want to do business on 3 different marketplaces. How does Topsort help?
Yeah. So what we do is today, what we focus on is very clear. We don't actually go to the brands directly, although a lot of them come to us where they say smaller merchants saying, we love your products and we sell on 3 or 5 different marketplaces. Can we tell the team at XYZ that we love working with you guys through this one first platform, and can I help you grow more? So a lot of our organic growth comes from that. But today we have a pretty simple and direct go-to-market strategy where we just go to the marketplaces first, where we tell them, hey, you have all these sellers and they're selling on you, but also on other platforms. And their marketing dollars today go to only the big guys, Amazon, Facebook, and Google, and they don't go to the marketplaces they sell on. And you actually have this chance to capture some of that budget if you were to have this tech. And then through that, we will then develop a relationship with the small vendors where they use our product to manage their sell-through rate in a way on an exposure on a marketplace. Then that's sort of where we come in.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think are some of the keys, having done it yourself, to being successful selling on a marketplace?
Yeah, I think it's always, you need to be super resourceful and really understand the audience. Like for marketplaces, different apps, different marketplaces, they have such different style and characteristics and attract very different audiences. And then that requires different strategies. So for, let's say you're selling earrings, right? And when you're selling on Depop and versus when you're selling like eBay, it's just very different and versus Amazon. So really understanding like the competition and sort of the landscape, that helps with being a very successful seller. And I think at the end of the day, it also comes down to just the product. The product really, well, I've seen through different marketplaces that when you are seller or merchant with very strong ratings, reviews, and have a product that just sells, that always turns out really well. and that sort of transcends different styles of marketplaces. But I think it's really stay in touch with the direction the marketplace is going at, and also trying to make a name for yourself on the marketplaces.
You know what, since we talked last, I kind of visited a lot of sort of these niche marketplaces. And every time I go there, I notice that there's like certain things that kind of show up as ranked really high. And sometimes they say, sponsored ad, things like that. What are those things, and how does that work? How do you get ranked on these sites so that you do get this sort of reputation, right?
Yeah. So it's actually super discreet, right? When you go on the site, sometimes like if you don't go look for it, you may even miss it, the labels.
Yep.
On Fiverr, on Upwork, a lot of those sites, it's pretty discreet. So what it does when you go, what is really sponsored listings or sponsored ads, right? So when someone goes to those sites or marketplaces, you could be browsing through categories, or in the supermarket term, you're really going down an aisle and then you're searching for specific keywords or one item, and then the results come in. And then sponsor listings essentially run a real-time auction with all the people that want to be the top of shelf result, because that's obviously the most valuable spot out of the whole page. And then there's one winner that comes up. So when you as a consumer see that label saying sponsored, that's actually the result of like thousands and hundreds and like so many vendors competing and saying, and it's a real-time auction where they're literally competing in price and sometimes various other variables, but saying that, okay, these are things like that, this is a winner. And then you get that impression. When you win an auction, it just means that you got that impression where that shows up. So that's what a sponsored ads are. It looks super small, but it really is a very sophisticated technology behind it that really needs to be very fast and renders in real time.
And when a site tells you, this is just a question I just thought of, like this is the most popular item, is it really the most popular item, or is it just because a vendor sort of paid or sponsored or something else happened behind the scenes to rank that item as the most popular?
Yeah, that's a great question. So actually not like, the auction algorithm is not responsible for all of the labels. So if you look at like a product listing on that image, there are 4 corners, right? On some e-commerce sites, you see like 3 of those corners are taken, and they have all kinds of different labels, like new releases, like bestseller, back in stock, and all kinds of different labels. What Topsort does is the sponsored or promoted label. And that is, I think in the US regulated, but like, sorry, if you can cut that part. But I think in a lot of countries it's not regulated, but in the US it is regulated, where you have to label it saying it's a paid promotion. And that part is either decided by an algorithm or decided by a human. If the marketplace is just starting out, they do not have any machines sort of supporting that. But then once you go beyond that and you have like back in stock, editor's favorites, and all of those things, and most popular, those are actually really curated by the team. So it's oftentimes manual. And those different rankings and labels, it's really a combination of mostly human efforts and curation with a little bit of the mathematical ranking. But I think those things, they're a bit combined and sometimes run in parallel as well.
So there could be some, machine learning and things like that helping to do these rankings, but sometimes it's just people behind the scenes saying, this one's really popular, so we're going to mark it as popular. It's kind of a combination of a mathematical expression of popularity and or some other judgment that's going on.
Yes. Yep. And it's not every company keeps it simple. Sometimes, especially the bigger companies, they can weigh in 20, 30 different variables and different things for that algorithm. And winning that then becomes a bit more of a mystery, which is actually why if it's just a mathematical game, it makes it much easier, where the rankings are things that you can kind of figure out and have clear metrics to point to.
Very, very interesting. You're working with multiple marketplaces. Some are big, some are small. it appears to me that the trend is for marketplaces to become much more specialized. Is that what you see also?
Yeah, that is definitely what we're seeing. I think I'm seeing a bunch of trends, obviously, because that's where we spend most of our time every day, talking to marketplaces, thinking about marketplaces, and talking to retailers. I think a lot of retailers are now trying to find their edge. It's really trying to be a little bit more out there and embracing the DTC brands and growing their offerings and keep betting on new trends. I'm seeing a lot of retailers start to move much faster than the adoption was a few years ago. And the marketplace is definitely, it's becoming more and more vertical. Like when we actually internally for our sales, we were looking at kind of just different marketplaces out there. And then we realized the best ones today didn't even exist 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And the ones that were very prominent 3 years ago are either public or already out of the market. So like there's lots of consolidation on top, but I think for the up and coming ones, you need to be very unique and stick to a vertical to kind of be recognized as someone that still has a chance in this very saturated market. And the benefit of marketplace is it's a little bit like fun, right? You're going on sort of an adventure where you're finding different things, and that is sort of what we're seeing as well. But definitely the winners in the sort of long tail and SMB of marketplaces, they're not even that small, but I think the ones that are growing super fast have very clear positioning and they're growing in their vertical. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's easy to go to Amazon and look for everything, right? And it's because it seems like they have everything, but they seem to have a limited supply and a limited number of vendors of everything. If I'm really looking for something, like let's say even auto parts or cosmetics, right? Or women's clothing. It seems like marketplaces are turning into sort of the new department store, right? Where the department store has it's a clothing store. It has a very specific theme, and that seems to be a trend. So that people are kind of moving away from the superstore back to shopping in these very specific sort of shopping stores that are there. What's sort of the challenge to an Amazon or an eBay, they have just so much. How do they see this specific kind of competition?
Yeah, it's super interesting where what it kind of aligns with what we're seeing is that the smaller marketplaces have stronger relationships with their consumers sometimes. That they're the best in cars, they're the best in flowers, the best in like food or like vegan food. So the ones that stick to their niche and really position themselves as the lead in the vertical and just like very passionate about one subject, they tend to attract stronger consumers and just like more loyalty. And that is not the same for the really big guys. I think that's why they're feeling the heat a little bit more and trying to look at different places to innovate. But it's just harder, I think, for a scale when you manage the curation, and really the message sometimes gets lost a little bit when you start selling everything. And with Amazon, for sure, like there are things that I used to buy on Amazon that I don't anymore because of the fake reviews and the fake products, and like those things just tend to cloud your judgments a little bit. So I think it's really the relationship, like not saying they cannot develop a really strong relationship, but just I think it's a bit harder. And what we're also seeing is that sometimes these large marketplaces and retailers start to have innovation departments that sort of break out and become a startup within a larger company. And those actually do quite well, where they start to have their own voice and start to be able to really talk to consumers. I think it's the authenticity and just feeling like you can trust these people and they care about what they're selling and they care about the vertical. Those things transpire and really help the small guys win.
Yeah. It seems like sometimes it would probably be, it's just my opinion, that these smaller marketplaces, like you just said it, sort of care about the niche place. They care about the quality of the items that are on that marketplace more than a large marketplace was just adding one more vendor, right? Not necessarily, it's about volume rather than quality. They're not really a part of the community. They're just a distribution point for all of this stuff. But the smaller marketplaces seem to, even just the way they market, the language around them, it's a little different. They seem more knowledgeable about the products, right, that are on their site in particular.
Yeah, and they may not be maximizing for the number of SKUs they carry. A lot of them actually say no to vendors, and it's not so much open arms. Everybody get to list on the platform. And I think that's helpful. Like Amazon, really, people kind of forget about it now, but they were a bookstore for a long time. They were just selling books, and they sort of stick to their own niche as well. And then things started to open up with third-party sellers and stuff. I think it's super important to really go through that initial stage as a marketplace where you stick to the lane, you really position yourself as the best in that one vertical. And then getting that share of mind is just so key for kind of, then we see a lot of really large retailers start to transition to a third-party marketplace model. And then with the brand equity they built, they're able to transition pretty smoothly and quickly.
Yeah, I find that the other thing I'm finding, is in looking at, if I find a product that I'm interested in, I find more information about it on the marketplace than I do, in some of the bigger stores. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And that's nice, right? To have more in-depth discussion about, the product and its benefits and that sort of thing. One last question for you today. You have these new startup sort of marketplace stores. How do you guys help them in particular? What does Topsort do that is really valuable for them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've actually spent a lot of time thinking about this. For us, the market is actually, like, when you look at marketplaces and what can we do to help them, it's so much, right? Like the space is so big, and it actually is harder to really narrow it down to be like, what are the things we want to focus on? Because we can't really boil the ocean. And what are the things that are real pain points for the marketplaces? Like, what do they need? And it's not just like the long tail, the smaller guys. It's also the big ones. It's really anybody but the top, probably 20 players globally. That's it. Even those we talk to, and they still have all kinds of pain points. I think in general, like the e-commerce infrastructure for marketplaces are much more behind than e-commerce infrastructure for direct to consumer. You have Shopify and the whole universe of Shopify plugins, but then there's not so much for marketplaces. There's not the equivalent of that. So I think we're developing something right now in the works. Like, we're launching probably in a month or two to help smaller up and coming marketplaces. When I think about like features and sort of products that will help, and what we hear from the conversations we're having with the smaller and newer marketplaces, a lot of it comes from just first level insights, like understanding what's going on before you even decide what actions to take. There's not so much visibility and data available for people running marketplaces today. A lot of those things still run on Excel spreadsheets, and it's still very much a manual back and forth, managing the relationships with the sellers. And they may not know what's the value of a certain real estate spot, like a page, or they don't know what products are being searched for the most. A lot of these things, like very basic, but very key to the business, do not have a solution right now at scale. So that's kind of where I think where we can come in, and we want to work on next to be able to help the really new and up and coming marketplaces as well.
We didn't talk about this much when we first met a week or two ago, but did the pandemic sort of give rise to a lot of new marketplaces, or at least a lot of new ideas about marketplaces?
Definitely. I think it not only did that, but also it helped a lot of marketplaces grow explosive growth. There are some marketplaces we're talking to today that are public that were not 3 years ago. And just the whole behavioral shift and the adoption of e-commerce and how fast you can scale within certain vertical because of the pandemic, those definitely helped the marketplace ecosystem boom a bit more.
So from the last 2 years, you've worked with a number of them. Do you have a favorite that you would say, hey, you should go check this one out?
as a user or as a consumer or as a
Yeah, pretty much as a consumer. Yeah.
yeah. There's one marketplace I really like. So I'm kind of a beauty products junkie. I mean, I wouldn't call it, I love beauty products and I really like skincare products. And I've been very into the trends in like skincare, cosmetics. And there's this one company called Detox Market. So they have lots of clean beauty products where they remove like things that are just traditionally like in cosmetics, but bad for you. And they have more like clean vegan beauty products. The site is beautiful. And then I've been to one of their stores actually in New York, and it's really nice as well. So that's been one of my favorite, really beautiful marketplaces. Yeah.
And you said it was Detox what?
Detox Market.
Detox Market. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
you've heard it here. So I'm sure we'll have a few people checking that out. I would be surprised if one of my good friends, they are one of the startups in the whole sort of natural skincare products industry, that we wouldn't find a lot of their products listed there too. So that's great.
Yeah.
Well, Regina, thank you so much for spending some time with us. This was very, very educational today to learn a bit more about this. A lot of us, we're just out there searching around the internet, doing business with all these folks, but don't know much about them. So this was helpful. And we'll remember Topsort and watch for you guys in the future and check back with you to see how this new thing you're working on comes about down the road in a few months. So
yeah, thank you for having me. Yeah,
you're welcome. Until we get to see you again, please stay connected.